Great news, everyone! Not only has SearchBot been upgraded to the latest ChatGPT 4.0 mini model, but SearchBot now has internet access. Talk about an upgrade! Ready to feel the performance boost? Visit searchengineland.com/searchbot to get started.
Hi folks, and welcome to the Future of Search Marketing Going Beyond Google. And this is a session with Deviation and myself, Ashley Liddell. I'm a co-founder and creative strategy director over at Deviation. We founded the business 6 months ago, and our proposition really relies on the topic of this conversation, and hopefully you'll get a lot of value from what we're about to discuss. Okay, so the first thing that we need to establish is what is search marketing in 2024. If we can agree on this and we can get past this as a topic, we can then get into all the cool stuff around the future of search and social search. So to me, in 2024, search marketing is about getting content in front of audiences in a way that engages on platforms that they're actually spending time browsing. And what this means is that this TikTok, this Reddit, and this YouTube video are all examples of search marketing, and they're all examples of content that in 2024 for certain audiences definitely resonate as search content. And what this is, or why this is because traditionally search looked like this. So if we'd have spoke about search 2, 5, definitely 10 years ago, it would have been a Google dominated conversation. Now we're at a situation where the bottom line on your screen, that's a much more accurate picture for what search marketing is. We see platforms like Reddit, we've got Pinterest, TikTok, Google's still there, Instagram, YouTube, and even Snapchat emerging as search destinations for certain audiences, for certain types of queries. And this is important because we see that Google are still responsible for sending traffic. So this is a piece of research by a company called SparkToro, a SaaS platform. And essentially what they found is that Google are still massively responsible for sending our websites traffic on the internet. But on the flip side of that, they also discovered that users are spending double the amount of time on social platforms as they are on 10 blue links on a Google SERP or on a Bing SERP. So what this means is that we need to be delivering content that targets that 20%, that targets that double amount of time on social media, and then moving people to traditional search to basically leverage both elements of this arm. And if we can do that, we can see that search is happening everywhere. And this is vital because search is, for the first time in a long time, is an evolving conversation. Okay, so if we look at this graph and this visual, we have search 1.0. That was essentially the Google centralized ecosystem of the past. It's where your search universe was dominated by that Google conversation. And it's where brands and publishers dominate the landscape. With Search 2.0, we see social platforms begin to really enrich the world. They're bringing about community, they're developing that community conversation on the internet. And through the likes of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and OG Twitter, we start to see SERPs bringing up different types of results, and people head into the likes of Twitter for news, Facebook for conversations with family and friends, Instagram to share content, and YouTube to discover content. Now we're at what's called 3.0, and that's where we're starting to witness this democratization of search, if you like. And that's where users, for the first time, are starting to step away from Google. So what's happening is they're starting to undertake searches like I went through on TikTok, Pinterest, and all of these other emerging platforms, which means that search is starting to coexist with Google having the biggest piece of the pie, but all of these other platforms emerging as destinations. And into the short or medium term future, this is where we're going to be playing as search marketers and as brands alike. Into that long term future, it means that we need to be preparing for the future of search, and 3.0 basically allows us to do that. The reason for this, 4.0 is going to be those large language models. It's going to be those innovations around machine learning and that dreaded term AI. And what this means is that platforms like SearchGPT, AI Overviews, ChatGPT, a more powerful version of Siri, Claude, and definitely more emerging platforms are going to be dominating the search landscape. And they're going to be pulling in information from across the web, not just from Google, not just from our websites. So by getting content on social platforms, by having UGC and all the things that we're going to get into in this conversation, we're able to future-proof our search because we're basically able to get brand mentions across the internet. And when those large language models, when those machine learning models pull from those data sources, our brands, our search content is going to be present for them to pull through. But what's facilitating this shift? Why is it happening? Well, we have these guys to blame. And it's not these people individually, but it is definitely the Gen Z audience base. And essentially, they're sick of the friction. So they've seen what's happening on a Google SERP and they're saying, nah, Google, we want better, personalized, more positive content experiences than you're giving us. So we're heading elsewhere. And they're telling us that they're heading elsewhere. So a recent study by Adobe basically found that 64% of the correspondents in there or respondents in their survey have used TikTok as a search engine. And this is why. Our websites that are delivered via Google, as was established by SparkToro, are failing to provide positive content experiences. We've got SERP fluff. So we've got bios, we've got descriptions, call to actions, newsletters, as you can see on the example on the screen, cookie banners, advertisements, all of this stuff that is taken away from the actual content that the users are seeking. Results are happening within 2 to 3 clicks. It's taking between 10 and 40 seconds to find a result. And Gen Z, they're noticing that other platforms can get us that content quicker. It takes us time to get to the important content on a landing page. So within this example, the timeout example, you have to scroll past that bio that I mentioned, all of these descriptions about who are timeout, before you get to the actual crux of the topic, which is things to do in Lisbon. So yeah, friction, that's the constant sort of go-to here. Google are providing friction. If we take a look at the other side of the coin, we have social search. And what social search is doing, it's getting content in front of audiences quickly, and it's providing positive content experiences when it does. So after a search, it's taking 1 click, it's 5 to 15 seconds. We're greeted with interactive, intuitive, lived content, and it's effectively showing that first-hand experience and that expertise that we know that our users are looking for when it comes to our EEAT sort of moniker that we live by when it comes to search content. The content's live, it's recent, and quite often on social media, it's trend-led. And what I mean by live is not just people contributing via live videos, but also people contributing in comment sections on forums, and then having a back and forth conversation with the creator. Now, yes, this is possible on our websites, but if we're honest, are our blog sections, our comment sections on those blogs as manned as they probably should be? No, they're not. Whereas our social teams are super on it when it comes to responding to comments on social media. And then the final point here is that social content drives further content creation through UGC, through content creator partnerships, and through that element of bringing our community into the conversation. So not only are we able to create search content, but through comments and comment content or through UGC, the conversation's able to just keep going and going through additional content that gets added to the conversation. And what this means is that, yeah, TikTok's a search engine, but it's not just TikTok. It's Pinterest, it's platforms like Reddit, it's YouTube, and it's even emerging platforms like Discord. And I've got some stats on the screen. I'm not going to spend too long going through these. I'll leave them on the screen. But what we're seeing now is that we've got Google acknowledging that for discovery queries, users aren't turning to Google. The younger audiences are saying, actually, TikTok, Instagram, they're the places to be. And then on the back of studies by Google and on the back of that announcement, we've seen Adobe, Tint, eMarketer, and HubSpot coming out with their own surveys, their own research into this topic and advancing this conversation. And what this means is that I think it's fair now to say that we're witnessing the democratization of search. So yeah, to recap, search is a community-driven experience, or social search is now a community-driven experience. What this means is it's not just brands and publishers contributing to the conversation, but it's our users within our videos comments, within our content's comments. It's user-generated content on the back of them seeing our owned content. They're then going and creating their own content on the back of that, which we can then leverage within our search strategies and our search content. And essentially, it's a much more involved process due to the low barrier of entry on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Pinterest, meaning that our communities can be much more involved in the content creation process. Then we can turn to the experts as well. So content creators, influencers who are making, let's face it, the guys on screen, the Logan Pauls, the Mr. Beasts of the world, who are making millions of pounds on this offering. They can support this. They can support our search activations. They can generate brand awareness. They can further conversations, and we can work with elite tier creators like Logan Paul, like Mr. Beast, or we can turn to lower emerging tier conversations, elite creators to basically contribute to our search marketing queries when we as a brand don't feel that we can make that connection with our audiences, but these creators can. And then perhaps the biggest sort of feeling here is around personalized user experiences. What do I mean by this? Well, on a Google search, we're very dependent on someone heading to a Google and then taking that search. On social search, that's not a concern. We've got TikTok algorithms, Pinterest algorithms, and especially YouTube and Instagram. They're probably the big ones at the moment that are able to serve users much more of the content that they show and showcase to the algorithms that they like. So what this means is if a user takes a search and engages with our awareness content, they're then more likely to see further awareness content by our brand and by the content creators in that space within semantically relevant topics. So no longer do we just need to rely on a user taking a search to be greeted with our search content. We could be showing them that search content before a search has even taken place, and that's super powerful. And then, yeah, we mentioned eat earlier, but we can talk about it a little bit more now. When it comes to eat, when it comes to that moniker of what we're all sort of striving for within our Google SEO content, we're looking for content that showcases experience. Well, social search cannot help but showcase their experiences because videos are filmed. For example, we looked at the things to do in Lisbon example on the screen earlier. The creators are going to Lisbon and they're showcasing their experiences within those things to do in Lisbon activities. So it's really easy for them to showcase their experiences. They're evidencing their expertise. A vlogger who creates 10 to 15 pieces of content on vlogging are able to say, I've done X, Y, and Z. That means that you should trust me because I've got expertise in this field. The same can't be said a lot of the time around the content that's getting created on websites because unfortunately, the authorship hasn't quite got to this level yet that we're seeing on social search. So expertise is much more able to be evidenced by creators and by brands within their content they're producing on social search, just because it's much more visual and we can see it in front of our eyes. Because of these two factors, these brands, these creators on social search conversations, they're owning authority within a niche. Communities are following them. They're giving them that signal that they like their content. They're engaging with their content, and that's making them an authority within a niche. And then finally, there's that element of trustworthiness. And on social search, it's people talking to people first. And what this means is if I'm having a conversation with a creator on a TikTok video or watching a TikTok creator's video, it feels like I'm having a conversation. If I'm over on Pinterest, I can pin somebody's creations or somebody's pins into my own boards, and it feels much more like an engagement with another creator, another person. On Reddit, there's that idea of forums that are then contributed by myself as a person, and then a number of other people can contribute to that thread, contribute to that forum, and it's people leading people, people giving word of mouth to other people, and ultimately people trusting people. So that criteria, that EAT that we obsess over on Google, it's actually much more accessible via social search platforms, to be honest. So with all of that in mind, we can start to look at the future of search. And what we're going to see is that brands are going to be discovered via these social search platforms, these TikToks, YouTubes, Pinterests, and Reddits of the world, alongside all of those emerging platforms that we talked about earlier. But the conversions, those key actions, they're going to take place with that brand search plus term over on traditional search. So I just want to highlight really quickly, Google's not going anywhere. It's still important, but the role of Google is going to evolve and it's going to change. And brand search, brand plus term, they're going to become super important on Google. And what this means is that in a world where we're starting to search everywhere and these search universes are emerging, attention is going to be everything. And it's now sort of much needed that we demand that attention. But how do you do that? Well, how we do that is we establish competitive landscapes. We understand what our competitors are doing within this social search landscape, and we understand where searches are happening in terms of what platforms searches are popping off on, and what platform searches are emerging upon. So I've got a tool for you that I'd like you to sort of take a look at after this session. It's called Glimpse. Glimpse is going to tell you which channels yourself and your competitors are over-indexing on and where these searches are happening. The visual you can see on the screen is how it's exported from Glimpse. You can then export that and turn it into something like this. And what this means is that we're able to compare competitors. So in the first chart, you can see that I've put your brand name. Here, we may find that our brand are under-indexed on TikTok. They're over-indexed on TikTok. But we see where we're turning up in that conversation. We can then compare that to our competitors. So for example, here, we can see that all of the brands are doing really well on Facebook, but that actually there's an opportunity for somebody to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, start creating content on TikTok and gain that visibility on TikTok. So this from Glimpse is going to allow us to do that competitive landscape and understand where searches are happening. But it doesn't just have to be at a brand level. It can be at a conversation level as well. So on Glimpse, you can put in your pillar terms, you can put in your cluster terms, anything that you think is going to be interesting to explore as a topic for your brand, for your industry, and do the same thing. And here, what you would hope to see is that you can create a search universe. You understanding where your brand needs to be turning up, where your competitors are currently turning up, where that opportunity is, but you're also understanding where those searches are happening. And you may come away with something like this. So you may establish that the presence of 70% of our traditional search competitors on the likes of TikTok and YouTube, that indicates that we should be developing a content strategy to develop visibility on these platforms as a priority. You might follow that up with, alongside these competitors, developing content on these platforms. Users are increasingly turning for content pillar 1, content pillar 3, and they're over-indexing on TikTok and YouTube also. So essentially, you understand who's going to be your competitors on those platforms and where those searches are happening, and then you can go and create content on that. But then you need to understand what you're actually going to create. And that's where you create a search universe analysis. So what we have here is a process that I'm going to break down super quickly, but then I'm going to give you a link to take a deep dive into this process and understand it further. So we have platform overviews and discovery. That's where you need to analyze a platform's emergence. You want to look at its core functions and the algorithm and understand that algorithm to understand if it's going to have an impact for your brand and your industry and how content ranks and what the potential of that content ranking on that platform means for your industry and your brand. We follow that up with understanding what the role of that platform is within this search universe. So for example, TikTok, great for discovery. TikTok Shop's emerging. So TikTok Shop means that it's great for conversion. But what about the stuff in the middle? Well, that might be where we turn to Pinterest, because Pinterest is really good for that inspiration and that consideration stage. By doing this at a platform level, we understand which platforms are going to be sort of leverageable for what stage of the journey, and we can start to create content on that specifically for that stage. We're going to evaluate competitor strategies. So that's that competitor strategy and discovery stage. We're looking at what creator partnerships have already taken place. We're looking for quick wins in terms of where we should be showing up, doing that glimpse stuff that I mentioned earlier. And we're establishing the competitive landscapes across those platforms. Trends, as I mentioned earlier as well, they're super important when it comes to social search. So we need to be assessing current, emerging and historical trends to understand what gains traction and how it can be leveraged to value our brand. Then we need to investigate the types of content that perform well. There's no point creating a Pinterest that's not going to gain traction because it doesn't look anything like a Pinterest, especially within our industry. So go take a look on the platforms, understand what content succeeds, what content fails, and then you can basically create more of what works and less of what doesn't. And then finally, we look for those cross-platform synergies. And what this means is that we're able to improve the ROI for creating a piece of content because we may notice that something that works on TikTok is also going to work on YouTube Shorts, Pinterest, Snapchat, and Discord. We may notice that our blog on a Google, we can take elements of that and put that into a Reddit FAQ forum, or put that onto a Discord. So we're looking for these cross-platform synergies so that we can maximize the value of our content across that search universe. And yeah, you can learn this process in detail. Really quick selfish plug. I write on this stuff on Search Engine Land all the time, so feel free to head over to this QR code, take a look at that blog around search universe analysis and all the other good stuff that I've wrote for Search Engine Land as well. And then once you've done that, we need to start taking it further. So if we do that search universe analysis, we emerge with that piece of work, how do we then take that further? How do we begin to come away with a strategy? Well, we develop a keyword universe. So this is one topic that we're working on with a fashion brand in the UK at the moment. And what we do is we take our Google keywords that traditional SEO teams have probably already got for us, and we start to map TikTok keywords, Instagram keywords, and all of these other platforms that we're starting to play ball with in. We map those to that traditional search keyword so that we understand if we're talking about how to style a football shirt on Google, on TikTok, we're actually talking about bloke core. We're actually talking about 90s aesthetic, retro football shirts, and all of these other topics. Once you've got these into a dashboard, into a list for each individual platform, give it to ChatGPT, give it to Claude, because these are smashing that semantic relevance and they can build you out that keyword universe really quickly. So that's a quick hack. And then, yeah, we can leverage social listening tools. So this is a platform called Buzzabout. We can put a pillar topic within Buzzabout. This is the Reddit feed from, or a Reddit report, I should say, from Buzzabout. And this is going to give us loads of insight into an overview. So it's going to tell us what the intent behind that search is and what the overview of that topic is. It's going to give us that trend line so that we can see how the conversation is developing. And then it's going to give us all the good stuff from engagement, audience size, and maybe what those topics are on that report as well, so that we can start to see what content we need to create. And then, yeah, there is the Spark Toro platform, which is basically going to allow us to see what audiences or which audiences are talking about which topics, which is going to be super useful because we can see that at a platform level and then create that content to speak to those people. And then finally, and this gets overlooked a lot, it's not always about tools. I think as SEOs, we often end up stuck in our ways when it comes to tools, but take a step back, get away from your tools, lean on your content creators, lean on those influencers that you're working with as your brands. Hell, DM customers and speak to brand advocates, get their thoughts, and obviously lean on your customer facing employees to learn about customer pains, needs, wants, and desires. In other words, leverage your community. The example you can see on screen is a brand called Refi. They recently hosted a community event where they got their best customers, not content creators, but their best customers to this community event. And you can guarantee that the guys from Refi were asking them questions about what they liked about their products, what they liked about their service, and what they disliked. And that's going to go into content moving forward. On the back of this, we leverage or we emerge with the foundations of a strategy. You're going to know what to create. You're going to know how to create it. You're going to know where you need to put it. You're going to know who you're speaking for. And that's basically the what, where, why, and who. So that is the core of our strategy. So after this, you can go and create. Really quickly, this is an example by Sephora. They picked up on that idea of differences between social and differences between traditional search. On social, people were searching for black beauty and being greeted with all this great content around black cosmetics, black hair products, black hairstyles, all of this good community content. On a Google SERP, you was greeted with a film about a horse from the 80s. Didn't match the intent. So they went on this campaign with their community to change that Google SERP. They created a hero video, followed it up with partnering with a load of more creators than they'd ever done before, a lot more black-owned brands than ever before. Basically changed the conversation and led to changes on that traditional Google SERP, which meant that this search universe was much more holistic and much more connected. So I realised that's all good in theory. I've showed you an example that hopefully ties that theory together and shows and evidences that. But how do we measure this? Well, for your social activations, we're getting to a time where brand mentions are going to become more important than ever. I mentioned right at the beginning of this session that Web 4.0 is going to be lifting brand mentions from across the internet. So word of mouth is going to be powerful. We need to be leveraging UGC. We need to be leveraging content creators, comments, publishers, wherever we can get our brand featured, whether that's a link or whether a brand mention, that's going to be super powerful. We can track that. The more brand mentions you're going to get in the long term, that's going to equal success, in my opinion. Social shares, they're not going anywhere. If content is being shared and I decide that content is worthy enough for me to share to a group chat, to my community on a Discord, a different Discord, that's a really good indicator of successful content. So look to your social shares, see where that content's being shared if you can. If it's a dark share, in other words, being shared to a WhatsApp community, speak to your community members, speak to your customers and see if they're doing that type of share. You'll get the number so that you know it's being shared. And then it's up to you to chase up with your community to understand if they're sharing in a WhatsApp community or WhatsApp chat. Engagement's always a good one. Watch time on TikTok and YouTube especially is becoming more and more vital. Comments and interactions on your Reddit forums, upvotes on your Reddits, pins on your Pinterest, all of these types of engagement across the various social channels, whatever they lean on as an engagement is going to be vital. Head to the comments, see what them comments are, because you'll get more content ideas there too. And again, I want to reiterate, traditional search is going nowhere. We still need to focus on traditional search. What do we look for on traditional search? Well, if we're in this conversation where we're knowing that traditional search is going to be brand search plus term, then share of search is going to become vital. So share of search, really quickly, it's the volume of search queries for a brand as a proportion of all of the search queries for all of the brands within your industry or your competitive landscape, definitely. So if you're growing your share of search, growing that brand plus bloke core, brand plus retro football shirts, if we lean on the example I talked through earlier, then that's going to be a good indication that you're having success with your social search when I can speak, and then move that back to a traditional search. That's going to lead to those conversions and lead to some revenue and some money coming into the business, which is always good. And then, yeah, social search, SERP appearances, bit of a mouthful, that one. But essentially, you can investigate whether your content on social platforms is being leveraged within a Google SERP. Increasingly, we're seeing Reddit, definitely, but TikTok, YouTube, these are all being covered within search highlights or SERP features on a traditional SERP. If you can have your brand doing all the good stuff on traditional search, and you can amplify that with a news feature with a brand mention that links to your social content, a SERP feature which features your YouTube video, and then a SERP feature which highlights your TikTok content or your Pinterest content within a Google SERP. That's going to lead to SERP dominance. Your brand are going to have much more visibility on a traditional search versus your competitors, which is never going to be a bad thing. And yeah, that goes back to that moniker or that ethos that we're looking at in terms of brands being discovered via social search and conversions and key actions being taken on traditional search from those brand search plus term queries. And yeah, you can calculate share of search across the search universe. So you can get an idea of your brand searches on TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram currently. And as this conversation continues to mature, as more platforms embrace their social search functions, then you can guarantee that we're going to be able to do it across more platforms moving forward. So don't just focus on share of search for traditional search, although that's important. Look at it across the search universe and see if you're dominating that search universe conversation. General rules or practices that I like to follow: fail fast. Okay, there's nothing worse than looking for perfection and never putting any content out. Deliver that content, trust your process that you've developed, that search universe analysis. And if it fails, so what? Delete it, go back, optimize it, go again. You'll find what works and then just repeat what works. Do less of what doesn't, more of what does, and really focus on them uplifts. If you see an uplift and you notice something works, do more of that good stuff. And I think that's me, guys. So that's all from me today. Hopefully you found some value there. And obviously I'm more than willing to have conversations in this. I know we've got a live Q&A about to happen, but you can also follow me on these platforms. Once again, co-founder, creative strategy director at Deviation. I've been Ashley Liddell. I appreciate your time, and let's get into some Q&A.